In the last video, we converted our UI file that we created in Designer into Python code, and we wrote all the boilerplate code to get a window up and running. At this point, we want to start interacting with our graphical elements. And the first thing we need to learn about using graphical elements in Qt is a thing called signals and slots. A signal is an action that happens in the graphical user interface, such as clicking on a button. That's called a signal. A slot is what that signal then connects to. So for instance, I could click on a button and that would connect to a function that runs some sort of action. So let's go in and actually do this and have a look at how we do it. So first of all, we want to access an element that's in the graphical interface. So it's in the UI. So we'll say self.ui so we can access anything that's in the UI. And the thing we want to access is the button, the enter button. So we say self.ui.enter button, and we want to connect to its clicked signal. So when we use the mouse and click on that button, it's going to create this signal called clicked. What we want to do is say .connect, so we want to connect that clicked signal to a function that we have in our class. Now I'm just going to make one up and I'll call it self.greet. Now I'm not calling the function here, I'm saying what the name of the function is. A common mistake is to put the brackets in at the end here, but that would actually call the function. I just want to tell the connect function here that self.greet exists, and that's what should be called if the button is clicked. So what I'll do now is I'll go down into my class and I'll actually define that function called greet. So when greet is called, I want to get the text out of that text box. So what I'll do is I'll create a variable, I'll just call it name, and again I want to get something from the user interface, so I say self.ui, and I'll access the name input. So the name input is where we enter text, and to get that text out, I simply type text and brackets. So that will take the text out of that text box and put it into that variable name. Then I'm going to create a greeting, and I'll say hello, and I'll put a placeholder there for name. How are you? Okay, so I'll format that string. So these two curly braces will be replaced by whatever's in that name variable. And then I want to set that label at the bottom to this string that I've just created. So again, I'm accessing the user interface. So I say self.ui, and it will be a label. So it's a greeting label. And on that greeting label, I'll set the text. And inside that, I'll put greeting. So it should set the text of that label to what I've created here. Alright, so just a quick repeat. We've connected the click signal. So on that button, if I put my mouse over and click on it, I'll connect that click event to the self.greet function. So if we go down to the main window greet, we're going to go to the name input, we're going to retrieve the text and put it into this name variable. Then we're going to create a new variable greeting, where we're going to format some text. We'll say hello, and then name will be put into that space there where the curly brackets are. How are you? And lastly, we'll take that greeting and we'll set the text of the label that's at the bottom to that string that we've created. So let's give that a run and see how we go. So I'll put in a name, Harry, and now I'll click enter and see if that function gets called. And as you can see, the label has now got the text, hello Harry, how are you? So I was able to pick up the click on the enter, I was able to read the content of that text field, and then I was able to change the text that was on this label. So if I change that now to Sally and press enter again, you should see Harry turn into Sally down here. So I'll press, and you can see it now says, hello Sally, how are you? So now we've created our very first very simple graphical user interface using Python and Qt. That is a good chunk of everything you need to know to do graphical interfaces. We've covered all the basics. The signals and slots, the events, we've got different widgets. We can interact with those widgets by using self.ui, calling other functions, and we can put in whatever algorithms we want and interact with our user interface, which we designed in our graphical builder called Designer. So it doesn't matter how complicated your interface gets, you can add lots of elements, lots of layouts, you can have sliders and dials and all sorts of different interface items, but they all work essentially the same way. You access them from self.ui, they have different values that you can read in, and then you can give commands for them to act a certain way as well.